So picture this. It's 1559, right? And you have this incredibly wealthy English lord,
Right.
and he is spending just an absolute fortune to secretly carve this tiny 4-foot gap into the solid stone walls of his manor.
Yeah, literally tearing his own house apart.
Exactly. I mean, he's hiring these specialized underground architects. He's swearing all his servants to absolute, death vow secrecy.
Yeah.
Because if he gets caught, he's risking being hung, drawn, and quartered by the crown.
Which is not a great way to go.
No, definitely not. And all this risk and money is just to build a hidden space to conceal a dissident priest.
Yeah, the priest hole.
Right.
Yeah.
But here is the wild part. Fast forward to today, and you sitting there listening to this, you're probably building the exact same invisible architecture on your smartphone.
Yeah.
You just, you don't know it yet.
Yeah, it's such a perfect parallel, honestly.
Welcome to the world of the embedded remnant.
Because, the technology we use obviously changes, right? But the fundamental mechanics of how human beings hide from absolute authority, that stays remarkably, almost terrifyingly consistent.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because today, we are doing a deep dive into a stack of research that looks at our very near future.
Very near, like it's basically here.
Right. A future where every single aspect of your daily life is flawlessly integrated.
Yeah.
Like, we are talking about a world where your face unlocks your bank account in a fraction of a second.
Yeah, super convenient.
But in the background, there is this artificial intelligence quietly scoring your creditworthiness, your behavioral eligibility, your social compliance. And it's doing all of this in real time.
Yeah. And the currency you're using to buy your morning coffee, it isn't just money anymore.
Right, it's not cash.
No, it's a programmable digital token, meticulously tracked and mathematically verified by the central bank.
And on the surface, I mean, it sounds wildly convenient, right? Like frictionless, the ultimate luxury concierge for your whole life.
Oh, absolutely. It's designed to feel like luxury.
Right. But the core question of today's deep dive is, what happens if you fundamentally disagree with the rules of that frictionless system?
That is the million-dollar question.
So we are looking at this heavily researched, just absolutely fascinating academic paper by Michael R. Williams. It's titled The Embedded Remnant: Within-System Subcollective Formation Under the Integrated ABCD Architecture.
It's quite a mouthful, but the concepts are incredible.
They really are. And the goal today isn't just to gawk at futuristic tech, right? Like, we want to understand the actual sociology of resistance.
Exactly. The human element.
Right. How do highly conscientious populations, people driven by deep faith or strict ethics or unbreakable cultural ties, how do they actually survive when a financial and administrative system demands absolute total compliance?
And that's where this paper is just so ambitious. I mean, it merges monetary economics with the sociology of religion and then layers on all this historical analysis to basically give us a mechanical blueprint of human resistance. It looks at the architecture of the system first and then the architecture of the human response to it.
Yeah, and before we get into the weeds on that architecture, we really need to set some ground rules for you, the listener, because the source material deals with some very heavy themes today.
Yes, very sensitive stuff.
We're talking religious doctrines, political regimes, dissident subcultures. So we want to be abundantly, perfectly clear up front.
Right. We're not taking a stance on any of the religious or political views we discussed today.
None at all. We aren't endorsing any specific theology. We aren't critiquing any specific political party. We are purely here as your guides, just to analyze the behavioral models, the historical patterns, and the structural frameworks presented in this paper.
Period. Objectivity is key here because the patterns Williams identifies, they're almost mathematical in their predictability. We have to look at this like sociologists, not activists.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to understand the resistance, we obviously first have to understand the machine that they are resisting.
Right. You have to see the maze before you can figure out how the mice are running through it.
Exactly. Let's define the walls of the maze. The research defines this coming system as the ABCD architecture.
ABCD, yeah.
Let's break down those 4 pillars, and let's start with A, which stands for artificial intelligence. And, we aren't talking about chatbots writing your work emails here.
No. We are talking about algorithmic administration at an unfathomable scale.
Right.
It's AI used for real-time credit scoring, fraud detection, and most importantly, eligibility scoring.
Eligibility scoring. That sounds so dystopian.
Well, imagine an AI that acts as the absolute gatekeeper to the entire economy. It's ingesting thousands of data points about your behavior, your affiliations, your purchases.
Literally everything you do.
Yeah, and it's deciding in milliseconds if you are permitted to execute a specific transaction based on this crazy complex web of risk and compliance metrics. It's basically the brain of the system.
Which is terrifying because, I mean, algorithms are black boxes, right? Like if you get flagged by the AI, good luck finding a human customer service rep to unflag you.
Oh, good luck. You're just a red cell on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. So the AI is the brain. Then we move to B, which is biometric identification. And this is the physical key to the system.
Right. The physical link.
We are talking about fingerprints, facial recognition, iris scans, voice prints. These become your sole identity across all financial endpoints.
And the implication of that is just profound because historically, you could use a fake name or borrow a friend's credit card.
Or just paying cash.
Right, paying cash. But under this architecture, your physical, biological body is hardwired to your financial access. You literally cannot separate the transaction from the biology.
Right, but I can already hear the skeptics listening to this saying, well, people will just spoof the biometrics. They'll use deepfakes or like 3D printed fingerprints.
Sure, yeah.
But the paper suggests the system is being built with these crazy multimodal liveness checks, right?
Exactly. It's not just a picture of your face. It's checking the microfluctuations in the blood vessels in your iris.
Wow.
Yeah. And combining that with the unique cadence of your voice in real time. So faking it becomes practically impossible for the average citizen.
So it creates this completely closed loop of identity.
Yeah.
Which brings us to C.
Central bank digital currency, or CBDC.
Right. And this is the lifeblood of the system. But we have to be very, very careful to distinguish this from the digital money we already use today.
Yes. This is a huge misconception.
Because when you swipe your debit card now, it's just a digital message to a bank to move a ledger entry. But a CBDC is fundamentally different, right? It is programmable base money.
Yes. The programmable part is the real game changer here.
Let's pause here and really explain that, because I think people hear digital dollar and they just think, oh, I already have Apple Pay, whatever. How does a transaction rule actually get executed on the currency itself?
Okay, think of it like putting a tiny, invisible smart contract inside every single dollar bill in your digital wallet. The issuer, which is a central bank, can dictate exactly how, when, and where that specific token is allowed to be spent. They build the transaction-level permissions directly into the money.
So the money itself has rules.
Exactly. So, for example, if the government decides there is a supply chain crisis, right, they can program your money so that you are only allowed to buy 2 gallons of gas this week.
Wait, really?
Yeah, and if you try to buy a 3rd gallon, the money literally will not function at the pump. The token rejects the transaction.
That is wild. So the money itself has the law attached to it. It's not just a medium of exchange anymore. It's an active enforcement mechanism.
Yes. And just so you know, these are currently being piloted in over 130 jurisdictions worldwide right now.
So this isn't sci-fi.
No, the infrastructure is being laid down as we speak, which leads directly to the final pillar, D.
Digital control.
Right. Digital control encompasses the regulatory and enforcement layer. Historically, things like anti-money laundering, AML, and combating the financing of terrorism, CFT, they required teams of human investigators looking backward at bank records, right?
Right, like an audit.
Exactly. But in the ABCD system, the surveillance and enforcement are preemptive. They're built directly into the transaction surface. You don't get audited later. You just get blocked from making the purchase in the first place.
Okay, so when you fuse these 4 pillars together, you have this all-knowing AI brain, inescapable biometric identity, money that polices itself, and total preemptive digital surveillance.
It's quite a combo.
Yeah. The research argues they create an integrated financial administrative surface. Like, it's no longer just a collection of tech tools. It's a complete ecosystem of absolute conformity.
That's a great way to put it.
But, I mean, how does it actually force people to use it? Because surely some people are just going to look at this and say, no thanks, I'll pass.
Well, the system applies pressure through 3 distinct overlapping mechanisms. You have incentives, coercion, and cultural pressure.
Okay, let's start with incentives, because they are always incredibly alluring.
Oh, they are. The system creates what the paper calls convenience differentials. Meaning, dealing in cash or older, decentralized systems just becomes heavily taxed with friction. It's slow. It requires extra fees. You have to fill out paperwork.
Headache.
But the ABCD system is totally fictionless. You get programmable rebates, you get your tax credits deposited instantly, you might even receive conditional subsidies automatically just based on having a high compliance score.
It totally reminds me of the all-inclusive luxury resort wristband.
Oh yeah, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. Like you arrive at this beautiful resort, they snap this sleek little RFID chip around your wrist, and suddenly life is just pure magic.
Everything is easy.
Yeah, it opens your hotel room door as you walk up. You just tap it to get a margarita at the pool. It automatically applies your loyalty discount at the spa.
You don't even have to carry a wallet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is so utterly convenient that you completely forget you're even wearing it. And you certainly forget that the resort management knows exactly how many margaritas you've had and what time you went to bed.
Yes, that is exactly the incentive layer. But then you have to look at the coercion layer.
Right. What happens if you take the wristband off?
Exactly. In the ABCD system, if you step out of line, the punishment is swift and it's automated. They don't just send you a fine in the mail a month later.
Because the AI is watching.
The AI can instantly freeze your accounts, throttle your transaction speeds, or limit your purchase amounts in real time.
The ultimate coercive tool mentioned in the research, and this is a quote, is cash elimination coupled with revocation primitives.
Yeah.
Which is, a very academic way of saying they can literally turn your money off with a keystroke.
Turn it to zero, yes. And finally, there is the cultural pressure. Over time, comprehensive monitoring just becomes normalized. It's just the way the world works, and there become deep reputational costs for holding out.
Like you're the weird guy who won't get a smartphone.
Worse. Eventually, your access to higher education, your employment, your ability to hold a professional license, they all become completely dependent on your integration into the system.
Yeah.
So every single person who adopts the system raises the cost of holding out for those who haven't.
Okay, let me push back here. Just plain devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go for it.
If no one is pointing a weapon at you, is it really coercion? Like if it's just incredibly inconvenient not to use the system, if you can't get a mortgage or a job at a big corporation, isn't that just the free market choosing a standard? Like I can choose not to have a smartphone today. It's just really annoying.
Oh.
Is this fundamentally different?
What's fascinating here is that it is fundamentally different, specifically because of the scale and the integration.
Okay, how so?
The research addresses this exact blurring of lines. When a system reaches a critical mass of integration, the distinction between convenience and coercion vanishes completely.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. If your ability to hold a job, to rent an apartment, to buy groceries for your children is entirely dependent on your biometric score and your CBDC wallet, then choosing not to participate is no longer a lifestyle choice.
Right, it's not just missing out on the spa discount.
Exactly. It is economic exile. It's about starvation. The convenience is just a velvet glove over an iron fist.
Wow. Okay, so if the resort is the entire global economy and taking off the wristband means economic exile, how do human beings actually react?
Well, the paper breaks it down.
Because you can't just pack your bags and leave if there is no outside left-right.
Yeah.
So this brings us to the sociological core of the research. How do populations respond when the system is inescapable?
The data points to 3 distinct population outcomes. 3 different ways human beings adapt to this kind of comprehensive architecture.
Okay, let's go through them.
The first is what the paper terms the participating majority.
And honestly, if we are being real, this is where most of us listening right now would likely end up.
Most definitely.
These are the people who just accept the system for the sake of low-friction living. They're convenience aligned.
Yeah, they willingly trade their biometric data and accept the surveillance in exchange for, seamless transactions and those programmable subsidies.
They're the ones happily tapping the wristband because for them, the system works.
Exactly. But then you have group number 2, the resistant remnant.
Okay, who are they?
These are the absolutists, the people who refuse to participate and attempt a full exit from the system. They say, I will not wear the wristband under any circumstances ever.
Okay, so they just leave.
They try to. To survive, they have to build parallel, completely off-grid arrangements way outside the ABCD perimeter.
But let's talk about the reality of what off-grid actually means in this context.
Yeah, it's rough.
Because it doesn't mean, like, starting a quirky Etsy shop and accepting Bitcoin. It means disconnecting completely from mainstream commerce, mainstream employment, and the entire administrative surface of the state.
Right. You're talking about moving to a remote cabin, hunting, gathering, and basically hoping the state doesn't decide that ungoverned spaces are a national security threat.
Right, which leads to a really critical observation in the paper. For a massive portion of the population, that full exit is structurally, economically, or medically impossible.
That's just a fantasy for most people.
Exactly. You cannot take a family member who needs dialysis and move them to an off-grid cabin in the woods.
No.
You cannot just abandon your extended family. And frankly, in many modern nations, the state simply does not allow sovereign, ungoverned land to exist. You can't just secede from the country.
And that structural impossibility right there, that gives birth to the central focus of this entire deep dive. Group number 3.
The embedded remnant.
Yes. The embedded remnant is a brilliant adaptation. These are populations that maintain formal compliance on the surface. They scan their biometrics, they hold the CBDC wallet, they pay their digital taxes, but beneath that monitoring surface, they secretly reproduce their own collective identity.
So they play the game on the outside.
Yes. They achieve what Williams calls within-system compliance, while simultaneously engaging in within collective identity reproduction.
Okay, to ground this in reality for everyone listening, think about the difference between the resistant remnant and the embedded remnant like this.
Okay.
The resistant remnant is a survivalist in the woods, right? Eating pine cones.
Right.
But the embedded remnant is the person who works a 9-to-5 corporate job, wears the suit, nods at the boss, scans their face to enter the building.
Yeah.
But then secretly operates a massive underground barter network on the weekends to support a hidden religious or dissident community.
Living a total double life.
Exactly. A complete double life.
And we cannot understate the psychological toll of that double life.
Oh, it must be exhausting.
It is. So you have to ask, why would anyone choose this incredibly difficult, stressful path? Why not just assimilate into the participating majority and enjoy the convenience, or at least try to run to the woods?
Right. Why stay and suffer?
The answer is that their conscience, their faith, or their core ethical identity absolutely forbids them from truly assimilating into a system they view as immoral.
They can't let it go.
Right. But the physical reality of the world prevents them from leaving. So they're trapped in the middle. And so they adapt. They form these hidden subcollectives.
But that creates a massive mechanical problem.
Oh, a huge one.
Because if you are living this double life in a world dominated by AI, pattern recognition, perfect biometric tracking, programmable money, how on earth do you not get caught?
Yeah, the math is against you.
How do you mathematically hide a physical supply chain or a weekend gathering of 50 people when every single digital dollar is being watched? How do you keep the barter network a secret from the all-seeing AI?
This is where the theory gets incredibly fascinating. The research introduces a concept called the discoverability-cohesion trade-off.
The discoverability-cohesion trade-off.
Yes. This is basically the mechanical engine of the embedded remnant. It operates as an inverse mathematical relationship. Let me break it down.
Please do.
As a dominant system increases its administrative visibility, meaning as the surveillance gets tighter, the cameras get sharper, the AI gets smarter, a subculture must drastically lower its discoverability in order to survive.
Meaning they have to become invisible.
Precisely. They have to hide their transactions, obscure their meeting places, camouflage their true allegiances.
But here is the catch. Maintaining that level of invisibility requires an absolutely immense amount of trust among the members of the subgroup.
A staggering amount of trust.
Because you cannot have a loose, casual network if one single leak means the AI freezes the bank accounts of everyone you know.
Exactly. Therefore, the harder the system pushes to discover them, the more cohesive, the more tightly bonded, and the more ruthlessly disciplined the underground group must become.
I love the analogy of a submarine running silent.
Oh, that's good.
Right. Like if the system is just casually looking around, you can be a little noisy. But if the system is dropping active sonar, looking for you specifically, the subculture has to run perfectly silent.
Which means complete discipline.
Exactly. Running silent means no one can drop a wrench, no one can cough. Everyone has to trust the crew implicitly with their lives. The external pressure forces absolute internal discipline.
That is exactly it. And it points to the great irony of total administration.
What's the irony?
Well, the ABCD system is designed to enforce conformity, right? It wants to crush non-compliance. But by applying that massive coercive pressure, the system inadvertently acts as a forge.
To forge.
Yeah, it forces disparate, perhaps loosely connected, conscientious objectors into unbreakable, hyper-trusting, fiercely loyal networks. The attempt to destroy the subcollective is the very thing that guarantees its durable, hardened survival.
But wait, Does the pressure really forge them, or does it just break them?
Well,
Because if I'm the AI administrator and I have perfect visibility into everyone's bank account, I feel like I'm going to win that fight. It sounds a bit romantic to say, the pressure creates the diamond.
mhm.
Does this actually work in the real world?
It's a great question, and it's why the research doesn't just rely on theory. It proves this concept using historical data,
Right.
because humanity has already run this exact experiment just under different technological conditions dozens of times.
Okay, this brings us to what the paper calls the M by N analytical framework.
Yes, the M by N matrix.
It is this massive 30-cell grid where the author maps historical and contemporary examples of these remnant groups. He crosses 5 different types of regimes, that's the M-axis, against 6 different types of dissident groups, the
Right.
N-axis.
Right.
5 times 6 gives us 30 conceptual cells. And each cell basically predicts whether a group will be crushed, survive in a mixed state, or achieve sustained embedded survival.
Let's walk through the M-axis first, the 5 types of regimes applying the pressure.
Okay.
On the far left, you have totalitarian regimes. Think Stalinist Soviet Russia or Maoist China.
Okay, so brutal force.
Maximum suppression, open violence, zero tolerance for alternative ideologies. The goal is total eradication of the outgroup.
Right. And moving to the right, you have authoritarian regimes, like post-Soviet Russia.
Enforcement here is a bit more selective. They don't care as much about what you believe in your heart as long as you demonstrate political loyalty to the regime on the surface.
Okay. Then we get to repressive theocratic regimes.
Yeah.
And the historical examples used here are Imperial Rome and the Iberian Inquisition.
Yes. Here, enforcement is driven by doctrine. The state cares deeply about what you believe, how you worship, and whether your private theology aligns with the state's theology.
Next is the surveillance state. The prime example the paper uses is East Germany under the Stasi.
Which is characterized by pervasive informational coverage and a massive, massive network of citizen informants.
And finally, on the far right of the M-axis, we arrive at the algorithmic administrative regime, the ABCD system.
Right. It's not driven by Stalinist ideology or Roman theology. It's driven by programmable rule application at scale. It's automated, bloodless compliance.
Bloodless compliance. Wow. Okay, so those are the 5 regimes. Now, who is feeling the pressure? Let's look at the N-axis, the 6 dissident groups.
First, you have the religious enclave. These are communities whose foundational, often sacramental practices simply cannot be absorbed by the architecture.
Because their doctrine forbids compliance.
Exactly. Second, ethnic or diaspora groups. These rely on deeply rooted kinship ties and long-standing alternative financial traditions that often transcend national borders.
Third are counter-economic groups. Think of agorists, people who believe all interaction should be voluntary, along with shadow economy actors who operate entirely outside state taxation and regulation.
Wait, let's define agorists for everyone really quickly, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Oh, sure. Agorism is a political philosophy that advocates for creating a society where all relations between people are voluntary exchanges. Practically, it means operating in the counter-economy, completely bypassing state regulations, taxes, and fiat currency.
Got it.
Yeah, they're philosophically committed to black and gray markets as a form of peaceful revolution.
Okay, perfect. So group 4 on the grid is the cypherpunk or crypto crowd.
The technical refusers.
Right.
Yeah.
They rely on self-custody of their assets, on-chain alternatives, and advanced privacy cryptography. Group 5 is communitarian or intentional groups.
Like utopian villages.
Communes, people who voluntarily withdraw into a geographically bounded alternative space. And finally, group 6 is aesthetic or cultural subcultures.
Like artistic or lifestyle communities.
Yes, whose identity rests on nonconformity. But the data actually shows these are usually the easiest for a system to absorb or commodify. They don't typically last long as a true remnant.
Interesting. Okay, now the magic happens when you cross these regimes with these groups. The research dives deep into specific historical cells to prove that the embedded remnant model is real and highly durable.
Let's look at the religious enclave under a repressive theocratic regime.
Okay.
The classical example is the early Christian church under the Roman Empire.
Well, this is fascinating because Rome demanded absolute surface compliance, right? You had to offer a sacrifice to the emperor or the Roman gods. It was a civic duty, essentially their version of a biometric scan.
Exactly. It was the ancient biometric scan. And if you didn't do it, you couldn't participate in civic life. Or worse, you were executed.
So how did early Christians survive that immense imperial pressure? I mean, not by fighting Roman legions in the streets.
No, they would have been slaughtered. They survived through concealed household, ecclesiae hidden, micro-churches meeting in private homes.
So they stayed out of the public eye.
They maintained surface compliance where they could without violating their core tenets, but they kept their actual practice invisible. They drastically lowered their discoverability.
Which forged those incredibly high-trust, cohesive networks.
Right. And they achieved sustained survival until the regime itself eventually flipped.
The paper also brings up the Spanish Inquisition, which is just staggering to think about mechanically. We're talking about Sephardic Jews and conversos in the 15th and 16th centuries.
Yeah. The Inquisition was a brutally thorough enforcement regime. It was the intelligence agency of its day.
It really was. And to survive it, these Jewish populations practiced surface conversion. Outwardly, they were baptized. Formally, they complied with the state religion. They went to Mass.
But beneath the monitoring surface of the Inquisition, they maintained their concealed Jewish observance.
And what's wild is the timeline here. They didn't just hide for a few years until a new king took over, right? They maintained this hidden identity for generations.
Hundreds of years.
How do you pass down a secret that could get your family burned at the stake for 200 years? You have to instill such a deep, unshakable sense of identity in your children that they are willing to carry that terrifying burden forward.
It's incredible.
It proves that human cohesion can outlast almost any enforcement mechanism.
It really does. Another brilliant historical analog in the research is Tudor England. Starting around 1559 under Queen Elizabeth I, you had Catholic recusants facing massive fines, recusancy fines, for refusing to attend the Church of England.
Let's talk about the economics of that, because it wasn't just a slap on the wrist. These fines were ruinous. They were designed to bankrupt the Catholic nobility so they couldn't fund a rebellion.
Precisely. It was economic warfare.
Right.
So how did they survive? They built priest holes. They hired specialized builders like Nicholas Owen to literally carve concealed architectural spaces into the walls, under the staircases, and beneath the floors of their manor houses to hide Catholic priests from the state's perceivance, the priest hunters.
Which goes back to the intro.
Exactly. They created a hidden physical infrastructure to support their sub-collective identity, while often paying the recusancy fines to maintain a facade of compliance on the surface.
I love that example, and I used it in the intro because reading about priest holes from the 1500s is exactly like looking at the blueprints for modern digital resistance.
Oh, totally.
A priest hole is functionally the exact same thing as a hidden encrypted partition on a hard drive today. It is a concealed space that the reigning authority cannot access, designed to protect the most vital elements of the subculture.
The technology changes, but the structural sociology remains identical. And perhaps the most relevant historical analog to our modern ABCD system is the Stasi in East Germany, the DDR.
The ultimate surveillance state.
Right.
And this is where I really have to challenge the premise, because the Stasi had roughly one informant for every 60 citizens in East Germany.
It was crazy.
In some neighborhoods, it was even higher. The paranoia was absolute.
Yeah.
Spouses were informing on spouses. Mathematically, if you form a microcell of 20 people, the odds are incredibly high that someone in that room is reporting to the Stasi or will be blackmailed into doing so.
Right.
So how does any underground network actually survive that level of statistical paranoia?
It's the ultimate stress test of the discoverability-cohesion trade-off. The research points out that underground prayer cells, dissident reading groups, and counter-economic gray markets survived perfectly well under the Stasi.
But how?
Through what they call strict informational discipline, they survived by compartmentalizing knowledge. In a traditional network, everyone knows everyone.
Right.
But in these cells, you only knew the two people directly connected to you. You didn't know the leader's real name. You didn't know where the books were printed. If you were compromised, you could only give the Stasi 2 names, not 20.
Oh. So they mathematically limited the blast radius of a betrayal.
Exactly. They bypassed the state's massive data gathering apparatus by limiting their discoverability at a structural level. And because they knew the risk was so high, the vetting process to even get introduced to one of those 2 people was incredibly intense.
Right.
The paranoia didn't break them. It forced them to build systems of trust that were mathematically resilient to informants.
So whether we are talking about Huguenots fleeing post-revocation France in 1685 or the underground house churches in China from 1949 all the way to the present day, the research draws this massive, undeniable through line.
It's everywhere in history.
The structural features are identical across centuries and continents. Formal service compliance, hidden collective practice, an intense reliance on kinship and distributed trust, and the generational transmission of identity. History absolutely proves that this model of the embedded remnant works.
It is the modal response of conscientious populations. It's not an exception. It is the rule. When faced with comprehensive administration, deeply convicted people don't just give up and they don't all run to the woods.
They embed.
They hide in plain sight.
So history proves the model. But let's take all this historical data and fast forward to tomorrow. Let's look at who makes up the modern remnant. Who are the groups actively preparing for this ABCD system right now?
Well, the research applies this historical framework deductively to contemporary groups.
Okay, let's hear it.
It highlights a few specific populations that are uniquely positioned to form the embedded remnant as the ABCD architecture comes online. The most detailed case study in the paper is a group it calls the BLPC.
Which stands for Biblically Literal Premillennial Christians.
Right.
Now, this is a fascinating application. Why this specific group? Why are they the prime candidates for resistance?
Because the BLPC population has a very specific, deeply ingrained theological and eschatological framework that forces them to view the ABCD system with extreme suspicion.
Right.
In their doctrinal interpretation of the end times, specifically their reading of the Book of Revelation, an integrated global system of biometric identification tied to programmable money looks exactly like the prototype for the mark of the beast.
Right, the prophecy that no one can buy or sell without a specific mark on their hand or forehead.
Exactly.
If you are a biblical literalist,
Yeah.
and a central bank governor goes on TV and says, soon you will just scan your hand to pay for your groceries and we can track every purchase, I mean, alarm bells are going to go off instantly.
Oh, instantly. Because of this deeply held, doctrinally rooted incompatibility, they simply cannot assimilate if the system crosses certain thresholds.
Yeah, their faith won't let them.
If a CBDC becomes programmable to restrict purchases based on compliance with state ideologies that conflict with their faith, their theology dictates they must refuse. But again, they can't all just move to a desert island.
Right, they have jobs, mortgages, aging parents.
So they are structurally and theologically primed to form an embedded remnant. Furthermore, they already have the social infrastructure in place.
Like what?
Strong congregational networks, a culture of pedagogy and teaching, and an ideological framework that validates suffering and resistance.
But it's not just religious groups, right? The paper also points to the cypherpunks and the crypto communities.
Yes, the technical refusers.
Their motivation isn't theological,
Mm.
it's ideological and mathematical. They fundamentally believe in financial sovereignty and the right to privacy. They rely on self-custody of their assets, on-chain alternatives outside the purview of the central bank, and privacy-preserving cryptography.
Yes. And we really need to pause and explain how powerful their tools are becoming.
Please do.
Because we aren't just talking about Bitcoin here. We are talking about things like zero-knowledge proofs.
Okay, wait. For those of us who don't spend our weekends reading advanced cryptography forums,
Right.
what exactly is a zero-knowledge proof? Because it sounds like absolute magic. How do I prove to a financial system that I have enough money to buy something without actually showing them my balance, my transaction history, or who I am?
It does sound like magic, but it's just brilliant math. Think of it like this. Imagine a bouncer at a club who needs to verify you are over 21. Normally, you hand them your driver's license. They see your name, your address, your exact birth date, your height, your weight. You gave them a ton of personal data just to prove one single Boolean fact.
Yeah.
True or false, you are over 21.
Right, I overshared just to buy a drink.
Exactly. A zero-knowledge proof is a cryptographic method that allows you to mathematically prove to the bouncer that you are over 21 with 100% certainty without showing them your ID, your birth date, or your name.
Wow.
The bouncer system asks a complex mathematical question that can only be solved if your underlying data, your age, meets the criteria. Your device solves it, outputs a cryptographic proof, and the bouncer accepts it. You prove the knowledge without revealing the knowledge.
That is incredible. So in the context of the ABCD system, cypherpunks are building alternative financial networks where transactions can be verified as valid without the central bank AI being able to see who sent it, who received it, or what it was for.
Yes. They are building digital priest holes out of pure mathematics.
I love that. And the third major group the research identifies are ethnic and diaspora populations, right? These groups might resist the ABCD system simply because they already have far superior, deeply trusted alternative networks. The paper explicitly mentions systems like Hawala or Hundi.
Yes.
I've heard those terms used in spy movies, usually associated with moving illicit money. But explain what a Hawala network actually is and how it functions without a centralized ledger.
Hawala is an ancient, trust-based system of value transfer that originated in the Middle East and South Asia. It predates modern banking by centuries.
Wow.
Let's say you are a worker in London and you want to send $1,000 to your family in a rural village in India. If you use the formal banking system, it takes days, there are massive fees, and you need a formalized identity.
With lots of friction.
In Hawala Network, you walk up to a local Hawala broker, a Hawaladar in London. You give him the $1,000 in cash, plus a small fee and a password. He doesn't move the money. He just makes a phone call to his counterpart, another Hawaladar, in that specific village in India. He says, "Pay this family $1,000 when they give you the password." The broker in India pays out of his own local cash reserves.
Wait, really?
Yeah, no money ever crossed the border. No central ledger recorded the transaction.
But wait, now the guy in London has $1,000 and the guy in India is out $1,000? How do they settle the debt?
They settle it over time, often through trade invoices or bulk physical commodities, or just balancing it against transactions flowing in the opposite direction.
Okay, I guess.
The entire system relies on honor and absolute trust between the brokers. If a broker fails to honor a debt, they are excommunicated from the network and lose their livelihood. When the ABCD system tries to force these diaspora groups into a biometric, heavily surveilled ledger, they aren't going to comply.
Why would they? Their system works better for them.
Exactly. They will simply submerge these traditional, highly efficient trust networks deeper underground.
This brings us to what might be my favorite concept in the entire research paper. Something called cross-substrate hybridization.
Oh, this is so good.
It sounds like biology,
Yeah.
but it's deeply sociological.
It is a crucial insight. Cross-substrate hybridization means that it really doesn't matter what your foundational motivation, your substrate is.
Right.
Whether you are driven by ancient religious theology, cutting-edge cryptography, or generations of cultural heritage, the operational survival tactics you have to adopt look exactly the same. The oppressive environment forces a specific adaptation, so you start to see this fascinating cross-pollination.
Give me an example of what that looks like in practice.
Okay, imagine a deeply conservative, rural religious community, let's say an offshoot of the Amish or Mennonites, who traditionally shun modern technology. But under the pressure of a programmable CBDC that threatens their autonomy, they realize they need a way to communicate and trade securely. You might suddenly see these agrarian, traditionalist farmers adopting highly advanced cypherpunk tools like PGP encryption or zero-knowledge privacy coins to protect their supply chains.
Or conversely, you might see a group of hardcore atheist crypto-anarchists realizing that their digital network is vulnerable to informants.
Right.
So they adopt the strict, tight-knit, almost communal social structures and vetting processes of an ethnic diaspora or a religious sect just to ensure nobody in their microcell is a state agent.
Exactly.
The tech community starts borrowing from the theology community's playbook and vice versa, because the maze they are running through demands the exact same skills.
Exactly. The discoverability-cohesion trade-off is a universal law in this environment. It doesn't care why you are hiding, it only dictates how you must hide.
Which brings us to the most practical and, frankly, the most thrilling part of this deep dive.
Yeah.
The actual tactics.
Yeah, the operational details.
Let me ask you, the listener, to put yourself in this scenario. Imagine you are part of one of these modern groups. Say you are in a BLPC congregation, or you're a privacy maximalist. You know the ABCD system is coming online next year.
The cameras are going up.
Exactly. The biometric cameras are being installed downtown. What exactly is your playbook? How do you pull off living a double life day to day without making a mistake that ruins everything?
It's all in the research.
The research outlines the specific operational and relational practices. Let's dig into the operational side first.
Operationally, the primary goal is reducing your footprint on the compliance surface while maintaining the ability to function. The data shows that successful embedded remnants always keep their cell sizes small.
How small?
We are talking microcells of 5 to 25 members. Any larger, and the statistical probability of a leak or an informant grows too high.
And compartmentalization is everything. This is where I think most modern groups would fail initially.
Why do you say that?
Because we love our apps. You cannot keep centralized lists, registries, or membership records. If the AI system raids a cloud server and finds a Google Sheet with everyone's name, address, and tithe amount on it, the entire network collapses instantly.
Right. Knowledge has to be completely distributed. One person knows the location of the safe house. Another person holds the private keys to the emergency funds. Another person coordinates the medical supplies.
Compartmentalized.
Yes, no single node can bring down the network if they are compromised.
Furthermore, they have to maintain alternative economic substrates. They must retain cash economy or barter capabilities for sensitive transactions.
Absolutely essential.
Because if they need to fund a hidden school or support a member whose biometric ID has been locked for noncompliance, they cannot use the CBDC. They have to use physical cash, precious metals, or off-grid crypto.
And communicatively, they practice strict informational discipline. Sensitive information is transmitted verbally, face-to-face, or through highly secure out-of-band channels.
No texting.
You never, ever text about the underground network on a smartphone that is actively scoring your behavioral metrics.
Just listening to that, it sounds absolutely exhausting. The mental load of maintaining that operational discipline day in and day out is staggering.
It takes a huge toll.
But the paper says that's only half the battle. The relational practices are just as important, if not more so, because that's where the trust comes from. How do you build trust that can withstand the threat of economic exile?
The relational practices are what build that ultra-high cohesion. The research emphasizes that these groups must invest heavily in generational transmission.
Meaning teaching the kids.
Yeah, but you can't just teach your children the operational tactics of how to use encrypted messaging. You have to instill the core identity so deeply that the next generation actually wants to endure the friction.
Right, they have to believe in the mission.
This involves intense pedagogy, memorization of sacred texts or core protocols, and patterns of endogamy.
Define endogamy for us in this context.
Endogamy is the practice of marrying strictly within a specific local community, clan, or tribe. In the context of the embedded remnant, intermarriage within the group is a survival tactic.
It's interesting.
It keeps trust within the kinship network and ensures that spouses share the same risk profile and ideological commitment.
The paper also mentions costly signaling, which I find to be a fascinating sociological concept. Explain how that works as a vetting mechanism.
Costly signaling is a way to prove you are truly part of the subcollective and not an informant or a casual participant.
Okay, how do you do that?
To gain entry into the high-trust inner circle, you have to do something that costs you something real-time, money, social standing, or physical comfort. It has to be a sacrifice that a state spy simply wouldn't bother doing or wouldn't be permitted by their handlers to do.
So it weeds out the fakes.
Exactly. It mathematically proves your commitment because faking it is too expensive.
But here is where it gets really interesting to me. The most brilliant relational tactic identified in the research isn't actually about the people hiding. It's about the people who aren't hiding.
Oh, yes.
It's the concept of interface populations. Let's dive deep into this because this is where I think a lot of our listeners might find themselves.
Interface populations are absolutely vital. The sociological reality is that the embedded remnant cannot survive in total, hermetically sealed isolation.
Right.
That's impossible in a modern economy. They have to interact with the broader infrastructure to survive, to get medicine, electricity, raw materials. To do this safely, they rely on sympathetic individuals who are heavily engaged in the mainstream ABCD system.
I picture them like the daytime alter egos of superheroes.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
Right. Like Bruce Wayne attending a charity gala so nobody suspects he's Batman. These interface populations are people who maintain perfect compliance on the surface.
They look flawless to the system.
They have pristine biometric scores. They use the programmable CBDC flawlessly. They pay their digital taxes on time, and they never trigger an algorithmic red flag. They face zero administrative suspicion.
Exactly. And because they are above suspicion, they act as buffers, negotiators, and shields for the core hidden community.
They are the bridge.
They might buy the bulk medical supplies using their perfectly clean CBDC wallet and then quietly pass those supplies into the barter network on the weekend. They interface with the system so the deeply embedded remnant doesn't have to expose themselves.
I really want you, the listener, to stop and consider this for a second.
Yeah, think about this.
Think about your own life, your own values, your own family. If a system like this rolls out and demands total conformity to something you find deeply unethical, but you aren't ready or able to go totally underground, are you going to be an interface population?
It's a huge question.
Are you going to be the one grinding away, maintaining a perfect social credit score, just so you can quietly shield a community or a family member you care about? It's an incredibly heavy, morally complex role to play.
It is, because you are essentially funding and participating in the machine you hate in order to protect the people the machine wants to destroy.
Yeah.
It's a profound moral compromise, but a structurally necessary one.
Which brings us to the final macro perspective of the research. We've looked at this from the perspective of the people resisting. But what about the people building the system?
The administrators.
Right, the central bank governors, the AI architects, the national security directors. If these dissident groups are this highly organized, this incredibly cohesive, and historically proven to be virtually impossible to root out, what on earth should the administrators of the ABCD system do about them?
Welcome to the administrator's dilemma.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Because the people designing the AI and the CBDCs, they are highly educated. They read history too. They know these underground networks will form. So what is the policy recommendation?
Yeah, what does the author suggest?
The author looks at the data, looks at the 30-cell matrix, and comes to a very definitive, data-driven conclusion. Accommodation outperforms enforcement on all long-run stability metrics. Period.
It goes back to that self-undermining nature of coercion we discussed earlier.
Exactly.
The research outlines exactly why enforcement is a trap for policymakers.
Yeah.
Cracking down, freezing accounts, hunting for the digital priest holes. It will not achieve universal participation.
No.
The data shows it is structurally infeasible to force 100% compliance without deploying a level of totalitarian violence that collapses the economy anyway.
Right. Trying to force everyone into the biometric grid just increases the friction. It drives the remnant deeper underground. And remember, the discoverability-cohesion trade-off.
Lower discoverability requires higher cohesion.
Yes. Driving them deeper requires them to become vastly more resilient, vastly more unified, and far more sophisticated in their evasion tactics. You don't destroy the resistance, you just upgrade its operating system.
So what does accommodation actually look like in a highly integrated digital world? Do they just let people break the law?
Not break the law, but the research suggests several operational levers administrators can use to create pressure valves.
Pressure valves. Okay, like what?
First, keeping physical cash available. Do not eliminate the analog substrate. Let the gray market breathe.
Give them an out.
Second, allowing for clear conscience-based exemptions. If a religious group refuses a specific biometric scan, offer an alternative even if it's less efficient.
Okay.
Third, implementing tiered KYC, know your customer regulations, rather than forcing uniform, maximum biometric enrollment for every single transaction, no matter how small. Create regulatory safe harbors.
Let me push back on that, though. Put yourself in the shoes of a central bank governor. The whole point of the ABCD system, the reason they are spending billions to build it, is to achieve perfect data, perfect visibility, stopping all money laundering, stopping all fraud.
Right, they want total control.
Governments fundamentally despise blind spots in their data. Asking them to intentionally leave a blind spot for dissidents seems completely contrary to their nature and their mandate.
It is entirely contrary to the engineering mindset that builds these systems. Engineers want perfectly clean, unified systems.
Exactly.
But the research points out harsh political reality. A controlled, tolerated blind spot is much, much safer for a society's overall political economic stability than a massive, radicalized, completely invisible underground network that fundamentally distrusts the state and is actively developing tools to undermine it.
It's the difference between a pressure valve and a pipe bomb.
Oh, that's exactly it.
If you seal the pipe completely, the pressure builds until the entire structure blows apart. You have to give the pressure somewhere to go.
Precisely. If you accommodate them, you maintain some level of dialogue through those interface populations. You keep them somewhat integrated.
But if you crush them,
If you enforce with an iron fist, you blind yourself completely to a highly cohesive subculture operating right under your nose. And the terrifying part is that the architectural choices being made right now in the CBDC pilot programs will lock in our long-term societal outcomes.
wow.
Path dependence means early design choices will be very, very hard to reverse later.
Wow. Okay, let's bring this all together. We have covered a massive amount of ground today on this deep dive.
We really have.
We started by looking at the towering, panopticon-like pillars of the ABCD system, the AI eligibility scoring, the biometric physical keys, the programmable digital money, and the digital surveillance. It looked like an inescapable fortress of total administration.
But then we looked at the historical reality.
Right.
Through the M by N framework, we saw that humans have always found ways to survive these fortresses, from the hidden household churches of Rome, to the generational secrecy of the conversos during the Inquisition, to the architectural genius of Tudor priest holes, and the strict informational discipline that defeated the Stasi.
The embedded remnant always survives by mathematically trading discoverability for intense, unbreakable cohesion.
Always.
And we saw the modern playbook. We saw how biblically literal Christians, cypherpunks, and ethnic diasporas might use the exact same survival tactics through cross-substrate hybridization.
They'll all use the same tools.
They will use microcells, strict compartmentalization, cache substrates, zero-knowledge proofs, and a heavy reliance on those crucial interface populations to shield them from the AI's gaze. As this technology rolls out over the next few years, society is going to fragment along these lines.
It's inevitable.
You, listening to this, you're going to have to figure out where you stand. You might be the participating majority, just enjoying the frictionless convenience of the luxury resort wristband.
Right.
Or you might find yourself acting as an interface population, quietly, carefully shielding a community you deeply care about from a system that doesn't understand them.
The human element is the ultimate wild card in any technological system. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on all this research.
Let's hear it.
History proves that absolute control is, and always has been, an illusion. The harder a system tries to monitor and control every single transaction and behavior, the more it perfectly trains its most conscientious citizens to become entirely invisible.
Wow.
So, as we spend billions building the ultimate, inescapable digital control grid, is the system actually just engineering its own obsolescence? By applying maximum pressure, are we simply forcing the most resilient, hyper-cohesive, and adaptable among us to build a better, invisible world right beneath our sheet?
Now that is a thought that will stick with you. The state's X-ray machine might show a clean break, but in the muddy waters of human resistance, the real healing, the real strength is happening where the machine can't see it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.